So this is a problem from the cumulative review, and it's a little tricky because we have an x squared and a y squared, but we can factor this problem just like we factor a regular quadratic. And let's first think of it without y squared, because I think visually it's complicated just because all of a sudden we have an x squared and a y squared. So what if y squared wasn't in the problem? So let's just rewrite it as 6x squared plus 5x minus 6. Now that y squared is still there, but for a moment, let's just pretend it's not. So this problem doesn't look quite as intimidating as the one before, and we'll go back to y later. Let's just try this one. So let's review factor by grouping, because I know if I have my a value, that's not 1. That's one technique we can use. And we're going to multiply the first number times the last. That's a times c. 6 times 6 is 36. It's negative, so I'd have a negative 36 over here. And so now I'm thinking of two numbers that multiply to 36. So I can have 3 and 12, and 9 and 4. And I'm not even worried about the positives and the negatives. And now I want to look at my middle number, and I want them to add or subtract to be a 5. And that's going to be this 9 and the 4. And now I'm looking at my signs. I have a negative 36 and a positive 5. So I want to take my 9 and my 4, and that's why I'm going to get a 5, because a positive 9 plus a negative 4 will give me positive 5. So this is where we're going to think of this as split the middle, otherwise known as factor by grouping if we had 4 terms. I'm going to rewrite this quadratic and break up the middle terms with these two numbers we just found on the side. So we're going to have 6x squared plus 9x minus 4x minus 6. And I just split up the middle terms with my two factors on the side. So now I'm going to take the greatest common factor of my first two terms, 6x squared and 9x, and that's seeing what can I divide into both of these first two terms, and that's going to be a 3x. And then 6x squared divided by 3x will give me 2x. And 9x divided by 3x will be a 3. And in the parentheses, I want to end up with 2x plus 3 for my second group as well. So for 2x, I can pull out a negative 2. And the reason I'm saying I want to pull out a negative 2 is because I want to end up with a positive 2x here. And negative 4x divided by negative 2 will give me a positive 2x. And then a negative 6 divided by a negative 2 will give me a positive 3. So now for factor by grouping, if I have 3x minus 2 and the 2x plus 3, that will be the factors of the new problem I just wrote. So that's a review of factoring in general. But I'm making this smaller because that wasn't the actual problem that we started with. But now I'm going to copy that down over here, that same problem we started with. And what if we think of it the exact same way of what we just did? Minus 6y squared. That's the original problem. Because I already found when I split the middle, my factors of if I broke up the 36, because I still have the same exact way. I'm going to switch my colors, hopefully to make that a little clearer. So I still have the 6 times the negative 6. All I did was add those y's back in with negative 36 here. I already know I'm going to have the 9 and the negative 4. So now I'm going to do the exact same thing, but I have the y's. So now I have 6x squared, and now my middle term isn't just a 5x, it's 5xy. So if I do the same exact process I did before, but instead of 5x, I have 5xy. It's going to be plus 9xy minus 4xy minus 6y squared. So I'm just breaking up the middle. I'm trying to just kind of relate it. That same idea we did here, but I just added in the y's. Now we have 4 terms, and we're going to look for the greatest common factor of the first 2 terms, the greatest common factor of the second 2 terms, and factor this by grouping just like we did before. I'm referencing the problem we did before just so we can relate it. And if we look at the first 2, we're looking for the greatest common factor. We can see that the greatest common factor of 6x squared and 9xy will be 3x. And then what we're left with is 2x plus 3y. And different than the problem we have above, here we had just a 3. But now in this problem we added back in the y, and that's why we have the 3y. Because if I had 9xy and divided by 3x, that's why we're left with the 3y. Now for the second part. We're looking for the greatest common factor over here, and we're going to have a 2, just like we had in the problem above it. But now we have a y in both of these terms, so we also have a greatest common factor of a y. And then when we factor, we're going to be left with 2x plus 3y. Because over here, for the second part, if we have negative 6y squared divided by negative 2y, I'll have 3y. That's where I'm ending up with 3y. So now when we factor by grouping, I'm going to group the first 2 together to end up with 3x minus 2y for my first factor. My second factor is 2x plus 3y. And that would be the factors for the original problem.